Welcome, listeners, to episode 27 of Future Secured. And before we kick off today with our very special guest, what I wanted to do is just do a call out. Now, Jason and I are super passionate about getting all of these important conversations around cybersecurity and sharing them as far and as wide as we can. And I've got a favor to ask you. Can you just hit that subscribe button, like button, jump over to our Murph & Group LinkedIn page and follow us? That'll let you see more of these great stories and share them into your community. So together we can really spread this cyber message. Today, we've got a very special guest and we're diving into cyber insurance. Now, that's a topic that's often misunderstood, misrepresented, and in many cases undervalued. Our guest today is Andrew Brett, Director of InfoSure Insurance, and he's here to help us break down what cyber insurance really covers, why it's not just about paying ransoms, and the surprising cost businesses face when they're responding to cyber incidents. If you think cyber insurance is just another policy on the books, think again, because one mistake cost your business hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. So this is going to be a great conversation today. I'm excited to dive in with my co-host, Jason Murrell. And Jason, over to you for the first question.
Thanks, Tommy. And Andrew, great to have you with us, mate. It's been a while in the making, and what did Tommy say? 27 episodes in, so a fair way in now. But yeah, give us a bit of a background. I sort of know your history, but just for people listening and might not have seen you before, give us just a brief history and time of sort of how you got to where you are now and what you're doing now, because I think it's sort of fortuitous timing, I think, for us, in cyber and cyber insurance sort of coming to the fore and probably being a bit clearer now. But yeah, just give us a little bit of a run up to how you got to where you are now.
Perfect. And thank you for having me, guys. I want to start by saying that I'm a big fan of the streams, and I watch them a lot. So to get on one is actually quite really cool. I think my story is important because I started in the insurance industry 10 years ago this year. And like most, I was a general broker. And by that, I mean you handle everything. So from your property to your liability to your motor vehicles to anything in between. And even back in 2015, I think cyber was around. It was definitely around in the brokerage I had, but it was very much, even when you were getting taught by the brokers, it was very much I don't know what that is. If someone asked for it, go ask someone else. And so it's quite interesting the sort of, I think, the progression over the next 10 years before I started InfoSure. So yeah, I worked in around 4 brokerages, worked my way sort of through the industry. But again, the thing that was consistent was the cyber message. So internally, it's very much still a new topic. I mean, most insurance has been around for 300 plus years. And cyber's probably been given 10, 15 max. So in the grand lifestyle of life, of insurance, it's still very new. But yeah, around two years ago, it was probably where being a young professional, I wanted to find something to really differentiate myself from the market and elevate my career. And so that started the journey. I got more and more interested in what the policies were, what I knew about them, and what I didn't know about them. And it turns out, 8 years in general insurance, and I probably only knew 10% of what a policy covered. And mind you, that was what I was talking to my clients about. So I was giving them 10%. And when you hear in the industry, the brokers usually like, clients don't buying it, they're uninterested. But when you actually look at what the clients get told, and most of the time it's as simple as, it pays for a ransom. So that's sort of this much, and they hear, well, I don't understand. They're not even at that point yet. They're not even thinking about a ransom. They don't understand why they would even be at that point. And then you add in, I guess, if you want to really look at it, you add in the fact that you've also spoken to them for about an hour on the other insurances. You're at the end of the meeting. Everyone's looking at the watch. Everyone's going, I've got 2 minutes left. Give me the elevator pitch. And yeah, so look, going back to the action point, I just dived all in and started InfoSure. So InfoSure is a specialist cyber insurance brokerage, and it's given me, if you ask my fiance, 24 hours a day to think about cyber insurance. But yeah, it's more that full-time piece. It's all I think about. And to be honest, as I said, I'm 18 months in as such, and I still think every day I learn something new. And I think, wow, it's such a unique insurance, as you guys said. It's not like any other insurance I've done for the past 8-9 years. And yeah, it's something I really want to share with other people.
Yeah, well, it's coming to the fore now, because that was something where it wasn't, and it has been confusing. I remember when in early days of cyber, when I was in there, it was actually pretty easy to get and pretty easy to claim, to be honest, because not many people had it. But then as the attack surfaces changed, there was more sort of catch clauses in a lot of the policies, and then people were paying for insurance but then not getting it. I think it's sort of come into a good equilibrium at the moment, where it's sort of a good balance now of you know what's sort of covered and what you can claim for it. It's sort of come full circles. But I think we're going to cover a lot on here, because it does open up a bit of a Pandora's box still with insurance, and where it sits and where it should play. And I'm sure we'll touch on the stuff with, silver level SMB 1001 and other aspects that are coming in to hopefully make the process a bit easier for people like yourself, brokers, but more importantly for clients on the other end to know what they claim for. It's because it's not different to home insurance. I think it needs to be looked in the same way. It's the same thing. You got to have your controls in place, like at your home. If you've got cameras and you got alarms and you got deadlocks on your windows and you got screen doors, and the more that you can have to secure your house, obviously your insurance policy will reflect that. And the same thing happens with cyber as well. How much you want to protect your business and where cyber insurance fits in. So yeah, I think this is a really good one if we can give all the people the information that they're going to need to know to keep it really simple, and basically, help them understand where cyber insurance fits. Because as you said, it has been always a bolt on. It's almost like an insurance advisor would go, and here's all the insurance stuff for your business. And by the by, we're at the last minute thing. Here's the steak knives. We've got some cyber insurance for you as well. And it's a lot more important than that. And I think it needs to be specialized with what you're doing.
And I think what you touched on there, Jason, is this is kind of an unknown area. You were mentioning it too, Andrew. So for the listeners, can you just kind of help us understand, what exactly is getting covered today and where the risks are? And I really like that house analogy. I mean, my staffy is probably my number one, security guard in the home. But I can't get that to take my insurance down. So, and I know there's some real risks around taking this insurance and actually not doing the compliance bit. So, the day you need it, all of a sudden it's not available. So just walk us through what it does and the risks.
Yeah, and I think if I can I'll start with actually adding to Jason's analogy, because I really love analogies. I think that's half the problem with cyber in general, is that there's so much tech talk that people just glaze over. Now, the thing I say to a lot of people is, just because you bought car insurance, does that mean you're all of a sudden happy to have a car crash? So that's the bit where I get them to raise the eyebrow, and I go, that's exactly to me what cybersecurity and cyber insurance is, right? So you do everything you can not to have a car crash, or you replace your tires every service, you get the brakes done. Yourself as a driver, you keep yourself aware. But that doesn't mean that you then either not buy car insurance, or flip it. You buy car insurance and go, oh, I can do whatever I want in the traffic now. I've got car insurance. Like, I just do whatever So I think it's this.
Well, that's how Tom drives. Tom drives like that, exactly. So it's good that you actually clarified that, because he treats his driving the same as he does online. So yeah, it's something we do.
Well, and this is and as you said about analogies too, they get people talking because they all of a sudden relate to it. And they're like, he's right, actually. I buy my car insurance every year, but it doesn't mean that I go out and, as you said, recklessly drift through traffic like Tommy.
It's also the risk, but it's also the risk you take too, right? Is that a lot of people get a car insurance, and what's your excess that you want to pay? So how much risk are you willing to say that I'll drop my premiums to pay that? And it's the same in your controls with your business. You need to know what your risks are and what you're willing to tolerate, to cover that as well. So different businesses, if you're doing a lot of online payments and all those sorts of things, you need to weigh that risk up balanced against what your business does, how much it touches online, what your third party risk is, and all these sorts of things as well. So treat your business, it's your crown jewels in your business. What is the most important thing? Is it your customers' data online? What's going to be the way they get in? And they're the sort of conversations you have. And I think, any analogy, me, it's try and simplify cybersecurity as much as we can. Like, just take all the bullshit jargon out of it and bring it down to bare bones. What is the average person in the street going to understand about it? And I think that's where I've seen you sort of grow more from when I first saw you sort of pitching insurance to where you've got to now, is you've made that a lot more approachable, in that approach. And that's it, whether it be house insurance, car insurance, cyber insurance, anything like that. You hope you never have to call on the policy, but thank fuck you've got it there if you ever have to, right? And that's the key thing with any insurance, is you never want to have to call on it. Like I pay my insurance for car insurance for years. I haven't claimed on it for ages, but if I ever needed to, it's just good to have that peace of mind that you have it in the background. But it should be a key part of cybersecurity, and for business, it should be in there. So yeah, give us some examples top line, because what are the main things you're seeing at the moment? Who's taking insurance policies? Who's not? Where are you finding most of the businesses coming from at the moment?
Really good question. That's a really, really good question. So I'll be completely blunt. It's mainly the white collar professionals at the moment. So your
Mm,
lawyers, the finance companies, your accountants, they're very aware of regulation,
mm,
very aware of what can go wrong, and they're more, as you said, they're probably more driven to go. Let's just buy it, even if we're not 100% sold on it. I'd rather go to bed at night a little bit more comfortable with what's going on than taking a risk. And whilst I enjoy helping them, and they're definitely in our key target appetite, it's, as you guys both know, it's not about just going, oh, we'll just look after the accountants, lawyers, and finance companies, and then argument's sake, the commercial roofer, great example.
mm,
I've had those kind of businesses in the past where I'm saying, look, you guys send hundreds of thousands of dollars to, say, a raw materials company every month because you need to make the color bond, the sheets to go put on the roof. So you have like 10 jobs coming up. So you're right, every month you send in your order. You spend 100 to 200, sometimes more, depending on the size of their business. That's where, and we go into that cover as people don't know about. Don't worry about the ransom as such. That's great. You're going to have that. But yours might be like a business email compromise or a social engineering fraud claim where you've got 90-day credit terms with that company. So you're not going to know that they haven't paid the bill for 90 days. They're not going to chase you. Accounts isn't going to come and chase you up. Someone sits in the email. Let's go business email compromise. Someone compromises their email, sits in there, sees that a bill goes to you every single month, works out, okay, this is fantastic. This is not going to be that hard. What I'll do is I'll wait. I'll send this invoice here with my bank details. They're going to go pay it. But then I also know that I've got 3 months to get the money out, and no one's going to even be none the wiser because of credit terms. And that, the argument's sake, it's only 30 or 60 days. Still that sort of principle, and this is just sort of from the trenches, I call it. The stories from the
yeah.
trenches, that I can do all that, and then they still go, look, I just let me think about it. And I'll go straight into another example where I had one of those, and 2 months later they had a cyber incident. And they turned to me and said, well, what happens now? I said, well, I hate to say, but now you're on your own. Or you went, I gave them I wouldn't ever say that, but I gave them an intro to an actual incident response team.
You did say that, Tommy. You did say that. He said you're on your own now. Too bad, son. You didn't pay your premiums. You're off.
No. But the thing is, I say to them, it's like now you're on full tow dollars.
Yeah.
So now the $4,000 premium I offered that client, you're probably going to be on somewhere in the rough vicinity of $400 to $600 an hour for incident response. So you're probably going to be 5 hours in, you're going to tick over that premium. And look, you hear about them all every day. And I think the tough part is, because I have so many contacts in incident response, I go, oh, what do you think about that? That report where it says 50 something thousand per incident. They're going, mate, they're the ones that get reported. They're like, we're doing hundreds of thousands. We're doing every 2 or 3 months, we're doing $1 million ones. And these aren't like, ASX listed companies.
All the ones I hear that are in the small to medium or the medium size are around the mil mark, right? So the last couple have been, precisely just under 800, a tad over 800, all that sort of stuff. So these are happening all the time. But what I want to get down to is where insurance helps as well, and where this comes into play is, because I've seen it happen where the hackers get in there, they pull up the insurance policy, besides seeing how much money and how often they do the invoices, they see what the insurance policy covers as well, and they'll hold the ransom to that amount, right? So they get that, but it still gets paid, right, to that amount that they've got. But also on your point with regard to incident response and all that sort of stuff, with your insurance, it's covering those sorts of things, right? How you respond to the incident, the legal aspects, and all those sorts of things come into play. So by having that policy in place, and that's what I want to explain to people here, is what the insurance covers. So I think just go into a bit more of that, because this is when the policy gets called in, you work with, cyber lawyers or specialists in that front and all those things. So they all come in. They're used to dealing with this stuff. So, if you're doing a ransom like that customer you just spoke to and you're on your own, you're dealing with the ransom gangs. These people do it every day. Like, this is their job,
Yeah.
right? So when you're called in to deal with an incident, they go, okay, it's this gang. This is how they operate. These are the people we have to talk to. This is the process we go through. This is the outcome we could expect from this. So that's the other thing. You're calling in experience in an incident where you have very little experience. If people have a car accident, they know exchange details, get insurance thing, take a picture of the scene, do all that sort of stuff. They know what to do there. They don't know what to do in a cyber incident. So just go
Yeah.
through what it actually covers as well. I think this is important for people to know.
Beautiful. So most, and this is there's almost 35 different providers of cyber insurance in Australia. So when I say this, I'm going to talk generally, but generally what should happen is your broker, when you sold you the policy, has run you through how your incident's going to go, or if you have an incident. Now, there's multiple ways of doing it. There's some insurers that have apps now, so you can download it to your iPhone and you can actually ping the claim button from your iPhone. There's others that do the traditional 1300 or 1800 number. Now, as soon as you call that number, and I will stress this because I think it's very important, cyber insurance is very different to other insurances. Most other insurances need a trigger point. Cyber insurance only needs thought, or it only needs suspicion, is what I'm saying. So you don't have to prove this. You can call the insurer and say, look, I think something's happening. Now, the second part of that is it's not an instant excess because of the nature of the insurance. And I would also, argue that this is why you need someone who's a specialist, is because you really want to see on your policy a deductible, which means that there's no charge up front. It just means they deduct the excess from the end of the claim payout. But you should be ringing that number as soon as you think there is something going on, because what I'm hearing is, and this is from the insurers that I'm talking to, around 50% of those calls never even get to excess, because the insurer is so motivated to get in and find out whether you have had a claim, so they can send their digital first. So this is going to the first part of cover, digital forensic specialist to go in and have a look, because unlike a traditional insurance policy, if something's on fire or a car's crashed, everyone can see it. Whereas if you go, something's happened in my business, you can't. You got to go find it. It's on the ether. It's out there, and you got to go. You got to go actually find out what's going on. So what will first thing will happen is you'll ring the number, or you'll submit on your app, and you'll get a phone call. You'll be triaged like the emergency room at a hospital. So instantly they'll move into, okay, what do you think's happened? They'll ask a few questions, few qualifying questions. It's a bit like the hospital. If you have chest pain, you go straight to the top. If you just sort of broke your wrist, you're in the middle. And if you're just feeling a bit of a cold, well, maybe we're fine. We should just move on. So the digital forensics will go in and sort of have a scope, because what they're trying to work out if this is an incident, if someone's still in there, or if this is something that's going to require a different angle, as you said, like a business email compromise. But I think once they can get the scope of it, that's where they can really bring the team in. So the first 48 hours, 24 hours are going to be the most crucial, because there's so many different ways the cover will go. But the main things you're going to be looking at is as legal aid, whether you're going to have the government eventually having a look at it. And obviously we've got the $3 million threshold. So anything over $3 million, there's high chance you're going to have to run through like an OAC, or something to do with the Privacy Act. But anything under $3 million, you still got to be careful of who's this incident going to affect. If your biggest supplier or your biggest contract is going to be affected by this, we need to bring in a specialist PR firm, public relations. And what I mean by that is, and this is the benefit of cyber insurance, is if you don't have cyber insurance, you got to go find there's about 7 services you're going to encounter throughout this incident, right? Only about 2 or 3 of them are tech. The rest of them are actually business services. So public relations, legal, you can basically start alerting customers or any infected party and say, look, we're going to actually make sure that you guys are looked after. And that might be something like a telephone service where anyone who's affected by the incident in your network can call that number and get some free advice from your policy, because they're affected now. So if they go, actually, because this is the big thing, I think what people are annoyed about, and I've seen 2 of them in the last 3 months, is people that come out of these incidents, they go, I was never told for weeks, months. No one told me. No one told me that my details were gone. And it's almost like they're more angry at the handling of it than the actual incident. I think we've matured as a country where it's not an immediate point your finger and say, well, you got hacked, it's your fault. But it's what we're seeing is the ones that don't do it correct are weeks and months down the track before anyone even finds out in their network that anything happened. Whereas the people that are getting on the front foot and going, this is what's happened. Just be aware that this email address, this phone number, your passport's now been compromised. At least you get a chance to go out there and do it. Now, the benefit of cyber insurance is you've already had this in place from the moment you bought your policy. You didn't have to go find all these services, and it's not the kind of incident where you ring your mates and go, "Hey, mate, I've just been, lads, I've just had a cyber incident. Can you all give me your best contacts?" Because one, you're embarrassed, but two, your mates are going to go, "I've never had a cyber incident. I don't know who does that." And then it's sort of moving into, well, we're going to go tender for these processes, or we're just going to take the first person after your waiting period, which most leading insurers have 8 hours. So you can start going, well, if we're going to actually have some business downturn on this, we need to make sure that like any traditional business policy, and they will, by the way, have full exclusions for cyber insurance. So if you have a ISR or a business pack and you have business interruption, note that's only for fire, flood, burglary. If anything happens with cyber, you can have the same cover but in a cyber policy. So the biggest financial hits and where business interruption comes in is the things people don't think about is your payroll. If you've got no access to your payroll and pays are due tomorrow and you have no idea and you're not allowed to ask whether your employees are living paycheck to paycheck, you can't just say, "Oh, guys, look, we've had an incident. We don't have access to our money. We can't pay you." You can liaise, and I have to speak very generally here because, as I remind all the IT guys, it is very regulated. I can't say it's going to be covered, but I will look to get an insurer and an instant response that will go, "Right, what do you need for payroll? We're accepting this claim. What do you need for payroll? We need 60 grand. Cool. Let's get that transfer done straight away. Let's get everyone paid. Let's keep everyone calm. Make sure they can pay their mortgages." And so let's move to the next stage. The digital forensics team will be back with us with a scope of work soon. And once we know the scope of the incident, we can move to the next stage. The other things, if it's still live, they have access to ethical hackers. They have access to threat actor negotiators. And as you said, Jason, they might go, "I've actually dealt with this threat actor before. I will go in there and have a chat with them and say, look, it's me, Jason. What do we need here?" I mean, we've heard of an amazing, I say amazing, it's not a great result because they got hacked, but we've heard an amazing story, which I'll liken it to if anyone on this who's watching this has been to Bali, where the threat actors asked for $1 million. They ended up paying them 250 because they said they're just throwing out a big number there. And so instead of, and as you guys might have seen in your industry, we've heard of people who don't have insurance or don't have a clue, snap pay those $1 million and go, "I just want my stuff back. We've got $1 million. Just quick. Let's get this going."
What are we sort of covering? Like, we've gone through a lot of stuff there as a top line, but you need to have your ducks in a row. Like we spoke about with the house example for, if your house does get broken into and you didn't have cameras and you didn't have an alarm and all that sort of stuff, your policy becomes null and void. There are certain things you need to make sure you keep in play that you're trying to prevent a cyber attack.
Majority of insurers decline claim rates are under 10%, so they're single figures. In fact, I've got one insurer that's claiming that in the last 12 months they've declined less than 1% of claims. Now, that's not to say that they just pay everything that comes through. I think it's to say that the only declines we're seeing is when someone's willfully just not even looked at the proposal form. We've just ticked it. As you said, the frameworks like SMB 1001 are fantastic because you can't really, you're taking it away from a long-winded proposal insurance form to a real work framework.
The fact is, putting your things in place, right? These things in place are key. And often what trips up people in any facet of life is they're not even doing the basics. You mentioned MFA there. They're not putting the most basic things in place. And, the framework with SMB for small to medium-sized business, obviously, is doing step by step and starting at a baseline and actually building yourself up and hopefully getting to gold or going beyond if that's suitable for your business. But this is the stuff I really wanted to get across is knowing your business, knowing your risks and covering for that sort of thing. Because the forms, let's be honest, with insurance generally, and especially in cyber insurance, what people are asked and have to tick boxes on, they don't understand half the shit that's in there. They're like going, "Oh yeah, I think," and no matter how well you guide them through, they're like, "Oh, that's, I think we've got that," or "Let me just call my IT guy who, he uses Microsoft, and I'll ask him, have we flicked those switches on? I don't know. Like it gets really confusing, and this is what we're trying to move away from is making that process a lot simpler. If I'm not harping on this for any other reason that I just think it makes it simpler. But the SMB 1001 framework for a small business does make that process a lot easier. And if it can fit hand in glove with insurance at the same time, we're killing 2 or 3 birds with one stone, right? And it makes that whole process a lot easier. And I know, speaking to insurers, they're wanting to build the SMB in the back end of their system. So it's like almost that's your tick and flick for your sheet, so that it makes sure that we make that process of applying for insurance a lot easier. And then your claims process is a lot easier too, because you said you're doing that. It's saying you have. Yes, that's happened. And you still got an attack. Obviously, you've done everything you can. No problems. Like you're driving. I was driving very carefully. Someone pulled out. Bang, I had an accident. It's called an accident for a reason, right? And this is something we need to get it down to. So I think, I just wanted to just go in there, because I know there's certain things you can't say. I don't want to get caught in the T's and C's of everything, but I think we do need to go down to the bare bones of what it actually is, and what we're trying to achieve here is that insurance is a backstop for if everything else fails. It's not I've got insurance, so I don't give a fuck anymore. I can just go and do whatever I like online. It's quite the contrary to that. Is I'm trying to do everything I can, and I have insurance as a stopgap to make sure that if anything goes wrong, I have that there as a backup and a support that will protect me at that worst case if it happens, and we say with cyber, it's not if, but when you'll get an attack. And so you have that insurance policy there.
Andrew, you mentioned precedent around this, and there's been a bit of a buzz and noise in the cyber lawyers about, I think it was 2 months ago, we shared it on the Murphin page in Western Australia. There was a company that provided services to a large mining organisation. This smaller company in Western Australia had an email phishing campaign that was successful with the CEO. An invoice of about 400,000, I believe, was diverted off. Now, the company couldn't pay this, so they went to try and solve this. I haven't dived into the full details. However, the judge found that the company was responsible because they didn't have the necessary cybersecurity checks and balances in place. And I imagine they also didn't have insurance. And this leads me into my next point. And that is really about how this is, to your point, Jason, no one expects an accident. And I've had two, I kind of grew up, I guess, like you guys, that insurance is important. And we're hearing lots of stories, especially around homeowners, about not being insured, let alone all the, the SMBs out there and in Australia that aren't. But for me personally, we had a family car, a wagon. My son took it up to Wollongong a few years ago. There was a massive rainstorm and the car got flooded and mold came in, and it was completely written off, and we got the money back to buy another car. I didn't think that would ever happen. The other one was the hailstorm in Canberra a bunch of years ago. It damaged our roof on the house and garage. And again, it covered all of those things. So it's really about this unexpectedness. So the culture, I think, isn't quite set here yet. So what from your experience, have you seen a change in the culture? Are you seeing more willingness? Are you getting more people reaching out to you, or are you still in that real education part? And I noticed that earlier on you said that you'll offer this extra cyber insurance, and a lot of times that's when you get the we'll get back to you. So diving into that culture piece, is it changing fast enough, and is there one or two things you think we need to do right away to kind of embed this culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the fact is less than 15% of SMEs take cyber insurance, so we've got a huge gap to fill. I do, touching on the SMB 1001, I do think it's that beautiful friction removing element where instead of saying, do you have cyber insurance, do you want it, or here's the proposal form, it's 17 pages long. The question is, do you have the SMB 1001? Yeah, we've got silver or gold. Beautiful. We can already get you a quote because you're already set. Insurer loves it. There's your quote. And to be quite frank, I'll plug myself. We've just released our version of that. So if you have SMB 1001 silver or above, mate, we're done. All I need to know is some basic business questions, because you've already got the standards that my insurer's already wanted in their props, but you've already answered it. So the hardest part for me, Tom, is that people, the only reason they're not buying cyber insurance is because of the amount of friction and the amount of processes and the archaic nature of which it's being sold. So, there's 35 different insurers, so there's different ways people play it. But the things that come into it is a lot of them do things differently, but they all have different appetites. So I've got insurers that go, don't bring me any lawyers. I don't want to do lawyers. If you bring them to me, you get 10 grand premium. If you bring me a accounting firm, I'll give you a 2 grand premium. So there's what's needs to change, or the 1 or 2 dot points is, remove the friction completely. Because once we get past the actual point where we can say to people, well, you don't have to do anything because you've already implemented in the SMB 1001. Hopefully, a lot more MSPs are partnering with cyber insurers or brokers and going, right, let's take this conversation to our clients. And in the sense of, well, we're going to start the SME 1000 journey with you.
Appreciate the stuff because it's a topic which causes a lot of division. It's almost like ransomware: pay the ransomware and don't pay the ransomware. All these sorts of things, that sort of come into play. But if you have professionals on your team, and you use the example before of $1 million, negotiate 250, I've heard those sorts of things all the time as well. There's so much layering of all the stuff, and there's so many stories you could tell. But I think the key component is do the best you can to get as protected as you can and cover yourself, and then get insurance where applicable to cover the rest.
I think that's the beautiful thing. People say, how much do I need to do? SMB 1001 silver. That's it. That's the short answer. That's as easy as I can make it. What do you need to do to get cyber insurance? Go get SMB 1001 silver. You're on your way.
I think that's a great point to kind of wrap this conversation up. Now, if you're listening, can I just ask yourself this question? If you're a CEO or a business owner, how aware of your cyber insurance? Do you even have any? And to Jason's point earlier, have you actually rehearsed what would happen if you had your worst day? Would it actually do what you expect it to do? And for anyone else listening, I'd encourage you just to go and ask, do we have cyber insurance? Let's get this conversation going. It's really, really, really important. And, we insure our houses, we insure all these other things. And if you aren't insuring yourself for cyber insurance, well, basically you're putting your business at the risk of just disappearing. And I'll just wrap up with the horrible cyber attack we've seen unrolling over the last 2 months with Jenna and the IVF. I'm not sure if they've got cyber insurance, but we saw the phone network go down. And all of these people who needed constant updates on their blood tests and all the other things in IVF, it's just gone. So the stress and the flow through the supply chain, there's a real impact to this. So get aware, get sorted, get a plan, get SMB 1001 silver, and you're on the way to actually winning. So thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. It's been fantastic. Thank you, Jason, as always. There is so much really important stuff in here. So thank you, and we will wrap this up now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having me.